left, right, it will have a black square with a circle around it. Okay, we're good. All right. Okay. Good, good, good. It's nice to find out a little bit more about y'all. Very informative. Um, so I was trying to figure out how to, for a second, I was just going to show, like, just this part, because this is the presentation part of what this code is under the hood here. Has anyone used Markdown before for the GitHub things or whatever? It's essentially just an easier to use form of HTML, and they call it Markdown. And I thought, you know what? Actually, let's go ahead and leave it up, man. This is all about knowing both these things, right? It's about the inputs and the outputs. So here you go. We had our kickoff talk with Brandy. We had our introductions. Who is this JB guy? You might want to know. I mean, I want to acknowledge that you've made. I took a leap of faith in somebody to help you on the next step in your journey here, and I want you to know that I want to acknowledge that and tell you that I take it seriously too. So I am now committed to your success. The only thing I ask in return for that commitment is that you let me know if you're not getting what you need from me. So we have me being me, JB, but also me being co-fellows. We have weekly feedback surveys that are, I read those like it's my favorite novel. Like I really, really want to know your feedback. We want to get better. We want to be the best we can for you, right? And if you're not comfortable being having your name signed to it, but you still want to give some feedback, there's a box you can check, and you can send it, and it's semi-anonymous. It doesn't go to me or to the TAs. It goes straight to the higher ups, and you can give feedback that way. And so I just want you to know, like, that feedback is essential for us. Like we're trying to improve this all the time. So yeah, that's that. I've been a developer for a long time, over 20 years. And about 20 years ago, I was a furniture mover, and I blew out my knee. And as I was recovering from that, I'm trying to get my job back at the moving company, and they're being they think that I'm faking it. Granted, in that industry, lots of people are faking it when they do that. I wasn't one of them. And I'm trying hard to get my job back, and one of my coworkers was like, JB, what are you doing? Like, look around. Like, nobody does this job into their 30s even. And I was in my early 20s. Like, how bad you want this job? Like, it's great for now, but like, do you really want this job that bad? Because it doesn't want you that bad. And so I started thinking around, and I had a chance. I had a motorcycle, and I sold it, so I had $1,000. And I saw in the paper, back when you look for jobs in the newspaper, that there was if I got this truck, that I could be a plumber's apprentice. And that's like, okay, awesome. I think plumbing's going to be around for a while. Maybe I'll get a job being a plumber if I buy this truck. Or I could buy this computer that I saw on sale, but I didn't have a job. I didn't have an apprentice. I didn't have anything lined up there. And I said, you know what, I'll give that a shot. I'll go with the computer. And anyways, and now I'm here. So that's the long story short. I kind of bring that up because maybe you've already run into this, maybe you will in the future, where people are like sort of poo-pooing boot camps, right? Because it's not like a big shot CS degree. And I have nothing against big shot CS degrees. If you have one, fantastic. But that's just one path into this. I've got my kids are able to go to karate classes, and my daughter's going to go to college next year, and we got food on the table, and I did that without a CS degree. And so if you're coming into this and somebody looks down their nose at you because it's a boot camp versus some other path in, then whatever. So okay. So anyways, welcome. We're going to be, this course at a high level is going to be about three things. It's going to be about three ways that we that that software applications are typically broken down into a thing. I have them listed in this order, but actually it's supposed to be view first. Usually you hear it talked about as model controller, but we're going to do the view first, then the model, and then the controllers, and all these things will make sense. All these terms will make sense as we go along, and then deployment. Um, but I'm not gonna talk that much more about it right now, because one thing I hate about overviews, and you could tell me if you're different, is you get all this information right at the beginning, and it's like, okay, here's oriented now. You got all that stuff, but you don't have any context for it. You don't have anything for it to stick on it, so it just kind of like goes away, right? So we'll talk about it at a high level real quick tonight. Then we'll actually get into start doing some code, and then we'll just revisit this kind of as needed throughout the week. Is that okay? Does that work for folks? Okay, cool. So, a typical schedule. This week's a little bit different, but after this week, we're going to have lectures on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights. Those are required attendance. Doesn't mean that you'll never have an absence, but you're expected to be there. And then Saturdays will be usually labs, and sometimes we might jam an extra lecture in on Saturday. So you're expected to be here on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. And then Mondays and Wednesdays are what's called co-work nights. I don't know if you had those in 201 or if it's the same thing, okay? So if they use the exact same terms, it sounds like they did. So those are not required, but they're going to be, they're helpful, right? So make it if you can, but attendance won't be taken on those nights. And this week, however, is, Monday through Thursday, every night, we're having lectures and or labs. And Saturday we're going to have, is going to be required as well. And so if these exact same terms weren't used in 201 or for anyone who came from elsewhere, so that, you got a question? Yeah, go ahead, Jesse.
No, I'm sorry, I was going to ask if you
Yeah.
could clarify.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's cool. That's what I was just going towards. So lectures like me up here talking, right? Co-work basically means you're all welcome to come here, use the facilities, work with each other. But I won't necessarily be here, though I sometimes am, and the TAs won't necessarily be here, though they sometimes are. But so that's co-work night, and then lab nights, which are required attendance, the TAs and myself will be here. And so yeah, that's the difference. It's sort of like you got to be here on labs, and you're going to have TA and instructor resources on those nights and or days. Yeah, that's that. Okay, but like I said, tonight we're going to have, the first night's always kind of like, we talk to Brandy, we meet each other. Tonight we're going to take it pretty loose, make sure we're all using the same tools, we're all kind of feeling good about going into the real step one. So tomorrow's step one, tonight's kind of step zero. And so that's what we're doing tonight. But tomorrow we're going to start a lecture in earnest, and we'll get into the regular flow. And that's it. We're gonna, in order to make all the lectures fit, we're gonna have to jam an extra lecture into one of the Saturdays along the way. And so that's just kind of the way it works out for the evenings. It doesn't take the same exact content that the daytime gets. We sort of have to finagle it a little bit. And usually there's a soft spot in the schedule that we'll find. And so just let you know now, most of the time Saturdays are going to be just labs, just working on stuff, but we're going to have lectures as needed here and there. Okay. Any questions about the schedule? Is everyone clear on the last day is the 5th, I believe, of May? Anything on that? Okay. All right. Sounds good. So let's, I don't know. I'm personally itching to kind of get into some code. So let me ask you, how did, go ahead, Christopher. Yeah.
I was going to wait to see if you touched on this.
Yeah.
Okay, one of the things that was mentioned earlier
Mhm.
in Slack was
Yeah.
that we would be rotating and having different class partners either every week or
Mhm.
every lab.
Yeah.
And how does that work? Because, I mean, are we going to be, is it going to be like a rotating schedule?
Yeah.
Or do we have to, because if we have to pick each other, we're
Yeah.
half an hour just figuring out, did I have you last
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, great point. Great point. I wanted to code so bad, but you're so right. That's a totally appropriate. We should talk about that. So, one of the things, and it touches on an even bigger issue. So, okay, 201. Saw your projects. They're fantastic. You're doing great stuff there, right? But 201, in many ways, not but, 201 was a lot about doing it yourself, right? And it was in some ways more like a school environment. And we're still in school here in 301. But we're trying to replicate more of a work environment. And so one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do a thing called pair programming, which is much more becoming more and more popular in the workplace. And so yeah, you're gonna partner up on projects and work on it together. And we'll go through what that means more tomorrow when we do that. But yeah, and so I will be choosing the partners, and I'll assign them. And it does make it a little tricky because you're going to have co-work nights aren't required, right? And so, but you're going to have to figure out how to work with each other. So it is a little tricky, but I worked for about 10 years doing pair programming where I was working remotely. So there are ways to do it when you're not face to face. And if there's anyone who has to travel from a far distance, isn't planning on coming in on co-work nights, anybody like that's not going to be coming in on the nights that isn't required, like that lives far away, yeah, awesome. So if you're going to be all in here, then it's even easier. And so yeah, that we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we actually have our first real assignment that does pair programming. And has anyone ever done pair programming before? Okay. Oh, you did? Okay, cool. Cool. I didn't realize that. So yeah, so that takes a little bit of coordination with your partner, but it's not that huge. And yeah, I'll be choosing actually with the TA's input, choosing the teams. So you won't have to spend time doing that. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Any other top level things? We're not going to go into the code and never come back here, but I just wanted to go into the code wars and see how you all did with that. So we talked about the calendar. Really, it's just here's one thing. So the calendar. So we don't have any. We have one holiday that we hit. We hit Passover. We have class scheduled for. I don't believe we have any other days scheduled on a holiday that I know of. So if there is something on the calendar, holiday that I'm not aware of, and we need to make accounts for that, let me know. We can figure something out, and including Passover, like I just mentioned. But whatever, any other ones that I might not know of, so just let me know. But we don't have any scheduled classes that are going to be put on hold because of holidays on this schedule. So that makes it kind of easy to remember. And we'll get into Canvas a little bit later. But what's that? Yeah. So let's go ahead and go ahead and do it now. So let's bring up Canvas. What the heck? So here we go. Here's what I see in my Canvas, which isn't always the same exact that you see. Let's see, maybe I can go into, here we go, student view. Okay, so every class that I teach, it's like a little contest I have with Canvas, where I do my best to get everything lined up perfectly, and it always foils me somewhere at the end. So I thought that this was lined up pretty good. I purposely haven't published everything yet. I was going to do that tonight. But I was feeling pretty good about this general setup. We got our week 1, lays out the different classes, week 2, etc. And then Christopher pointed out somewhere, maybe in the grades section, there's like all this junk. Something that was, where was it? Code Wars pre-work due June 3rd. Like, where did that come from? Like, I have no idea. So I'm going to get this fixed up before class tomorrow night. And the reason I didn't do it right away when when Christopher pointed out, is because I believe it sends you like emails every time I make a change. Have you been getting emails like that? Okay. Okay. So, and so I will send out a Slack to y'all that says, I'm about to clean all this up. You may want to either ignore these emails for a little bit or turn off the set or change the setting that gets them. And then you're going to want to turn it back because after that point, you're going to want to see them. So my apologies on that one. I didn't see this view. And we'll get it all there. Everything's in there, and everything that we want is in there, but it's just like some extra stuff that we don't want in there. Yeah. Mhm. Yeah. Oh yeah. Right. And the submission will be in Canvas, but the actual like links to the readings themselves will be in the lecture repo. It's called, yeah. And again, we will dive deeper into that. Okay. How did the Code Wars go? Yeah. And let's see, which one was it? It was right here. Bring it up real quick. This kata. Let's try it. I wanted to go through it actually and get kind of so I can get a sense of where you're all at with JavaScript. And but before we start that, I want to say like wherever you're at, that's totally okay. That's totally okay wherever you're at, because if someone else is a little bit more comfortable with JavaScript, well, that's where they're at, right? So I really want to be clear on that. You have total permission to be exactly where you're at with the JavaScript. So if I ask you a question, and I want to ask you questions, if I ask you questions and you're not sure, just say you're not sure, and we can talk it through, right? This isn't about putting anybody on the spot. But what I wanted to do is actually ask you all how you solved this. So does anyone remember this assignment? Okay. So it is. The first input array contains correct answers to the exam. The second one, blah blah blah. Now some people had trouble with this for one particular way. I want to see if anybody here had that. Anybody have trouble with it? Yeah? And can you put your finger on what was happening with the tele? Yeah. 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 So let's talk through this, because it's got some cool things, and it's got a little gotcha too. But one of the things is that it is like actually probably the first hurdle is just understanding what they want, what they're asking, right? So anybody can put in a nutshell what they think is being asked for here? Yeah? Anybody? Go ahead and shout out or raise your hand or whatever. Yeah, Jay. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, gotcha. So let me ask. This is gonna be. I wanna check all my assumptions. Let me ask real quick. Everybody know what an array is? Cool. So this is an array of some stuff in quotes. What's another word for some stuff in quotes? Strings. Okay, it's an array of strings. Does an array have to be strings? Could it be like a string and a number and something else? Yeah, that's right. JavaScript, that could be whatever you want. That'll sometimes be awesome and sometimes be a pain, but that's how JavaScript is. Okay, cool. So we've got two arrays. The first input is the correct answers. The second one is the actual answers or whatever, right? Okay, cool. And so, well, what if one of them's empty? Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. So you're taking it to the next level, my dude, because they just tell you that it's not going to be empty, but you went ahead and actually checked in case you did get an empty. Yeah. 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 So look at that. So they say right here that it's not going to be empty, and then they have an empty in the test. So, well, guess what? Sometimes bosses are like that too. And this is pretty real world. They're like, but boss, you said, or client, or whoever, right? You said A, and you ended up giving me B. Well. So here we are. We got 2, and you checked Madhu for if it's empty. And then how about if they're different lengths? That'll screw things up. Okay. Cool. Okay. Yeah. Did everybody else do that? Went ahead and took them at their word that even though they lied to us about the arrays, that they were telling the truth about it, both the arrays being the same length. Cool. That seems reasonable. Okay. All right. So we got 2 arrays. They're not empty, or maybe they are, and they're the same length. All right. Cool. So let's start coding that out. I'm going to go through and ask. I'm going to go through in a certain order, just kind of asking you for what I should type. So we got an array coming in, array 1 and array 2, and it could be straight. It could be straight typing, the actual code. It can also be pseudocode. Are you familiar with that term, pseudocode? Okay. Anybody want to define that real quick? Pseudocode is? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, nice. I like it. Something it's kind of splitting the difference between JavaScript and English, right? In some ways. Okay. So, Tyler, you feeling like you understand what's being asked of you now?
Yeah, no, we're supposed to compare the 2 arrays in that new array.
Okay.
And you get 4 points for a correct answer and -1, I believe, for a wrong answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you want to take a stab at how you want to attack it?
Not really.
Yeah, no problem. Night 1, man. There's no rules. You just do it. How about you, Jackie? Okay. Okay. Mhm. Okay. Okay. Oh, so can I interrupt you, Jackie, just before you move on to the next part? So our first task, as I'm hearing you define it, is just to kind of cycle through the array, right? And since they're both the same length, you can infer something safely about both of them, right? Okay. So how would you suggest we go through or cycle through this array? Okay. Okay. Oh, just a sec. Just a second. I just want to talk through this real quick. Okay. Can everybody? Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay. I can't. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right. So, forgive me because I don't know what all you learned. I've seen your projects; they were awesome, but I don't know exactly what you learned in 201. So, everybody, how are folks feeling with for loops? Yeah? Give a thumbs up. And if anybody has a thumbs in between or whatever, I want to see that too.
5 scale.
Okay, sure, 5s. Okay. All right, 5s, 5s, 5s. Okay, anybody less than 5? Okay, cool. All right. So here we go. All right, awesome. So we're going through. We're setting some variables, initializing it to 0. And then we do here. So the for loop, just to reiterate, the for loop has three clauses, I guess maybe they call them, or sections. The first place is where you initialize your stuff. It's kind of your setup. The second section is the condition that determines whether or not it will be run. By it, I mean with the stuff within the brackets there, and that block. And then the third one is after it's run, what happens, right? Okay, so that looks pretty good. It looks like to me, like probably if we log this out, if we logged out I here, and let's say the array is 4 items long, what are we going to see? Mm-hmm. 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, cool. All right, but we don't want to just find we don't want to find that. We want to do some comparisons of the contents of this list, right? Of these two lists. Excuse me. So, uh, Jesse, how you feeling about grabbing the contents of these two lists by their indices?
Yeah, so obviously you did the initial
Okay.
the first thing. I checked against was the empty string.
Okay.
So then it was new.
Sure. Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah.
if array two and so I assumed like array one was the base because that was the actual intent.
Uh huh.
Array two was student. So
Yeah.
array two at position I equals these three. The other thing I did is
Okay.
I added like a variable within the function was count.
Okay.
I usually go above the
Awesome.
there you get
Score
score count.
count. Okay. Awesome. Okay. Score count plus equals 0. Sweet. Everybody, everybody good with that plus equal notation? Okay. Awesome. Okay, you're way. I'll speed it up here because you all are crushing it. So, okay. So, cool. So that looks like good. So we got a score of 0. If we go through here, we find anywhere the second one, which is the actual responses from the student or whatever, is blank, then we got a 0. Okay. So that gets us to 0. And I'll move on to Quad then. Quad, how about the other situations, conditions? Okay. Okay. So, so like right here where my cursor is, like put an if there. Okay. So array 2, if I heard you right. Oops. Array 2 I equals. Okay. Awesome. Array 1. Did I hear you right? Okay, cool. Then sweet. All right. And let's see. Hey, Anna, what would you add to get us all the way there? Oh, and boy, let's say yes. I screwed up. Okay. All right. So score count in this case. Okay. Okay. All right. All right. All right. And then what does it say? Log it out, I think maybe. Okay. Sweet. Anybody see anything that would not give the right result, which is different than exactly the code that you have, but just anything that would mean this code would break? And mhm. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And it's really easy to miss. Well, at least lots of people missed it because it's like you get into it and you start doing it. It seems like you covered everything. But yeah, that's the one. That's the one. It is this additional condition after all this has been happening, then what do we want to check for? Okay. So I'm sorry. Say that one more time. Okay. Count. Okay. All right. Let's see how that's doing. All right. Well, we'll run that in a second. That looks decent to me. I think it's going to work. Let's try it out. Yay. Let's see if it passes all the tests under the hood. Very good, very good, very good. And now it says you may take your correctamundo. You may take your time to refactor, /comment your solution and submit when ready. Are folks familiar with the term refactor? Okay. All right. In a nutshell, yeah, it is changing the internal structure of your code without changing the external behavior. So it's really, really great that even at this right here, that they're even bringing this up, because refactoring is great. Here's one thing that I would refactor myself if I was working with you as a pair programmer or reviewing your code, is I feel like the code nests a little bit more than I'd like here. I think that we could basically move that up so that we can have this if equals blank, else if, then doing that test. So rather than nesting this if within the block there, we could just move it up. I think we could try it out real quick. The only thing I don't like about Code Wars is it doesn't format very nicely. So everyone see what I did? I just unnested that. So now it's if, else, if, else. Let's try it again. Yay. Okay. Well, that's feeling pretty good. Really, any last tweaks we might make? Yeah, Jay. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's try it. So I had a log there anyways. Okay, so it was return math.max 0 or score count, like that. Okay, yeah, sorry. This thing goes way down. Let's see. All right, that's pretty fancy. Is folks familiar with math.max or math.anything? Okay, right. Math is this object that JavaScript gives us, or JavaScript running in the browser gives us, and one of the methods or functions on the math object is max. Takes in 2 arguments that are expected to be numbers and returns you the bigger one. Fantastic. Crushing it. Okay. Nice. Okay. All right. Well, that seems like that went pretty well for folks. Well, anything else we want to do here before we move on? Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. So we have a situation where it's like adding 0 to something is kind of the same as leaving it alone, right? But this is one it's kind of worth thinking about. Like the rules said that you want to add 0. We really don't need to in this case, but it also kind of communicates communicates following the rules. So that's like, I'm with you. I'd probably remove it, but it is kind of the thing that sometimes you're going to have to make trade-offs between like, okay, this code is not technically necessary, but maybe the rules are going to change a little bit about what happens when you have a blank. Maybe it's kind of nice to really communicate your intent via your code. And somebody said one time that a program is like a story that you're telling another developer about how you solved the problem, because the computer doesn't really care. As long as you're not breaking any syntax rules, you could name your stuff as elegantly or as poorly as you want, right? The computer doesn't care. In fact, sometimes there's tools that will actually take all your JavaScript and smush it down into the smallest form possible and mess up your variable names all over the place, right? So really what we're doing here is we're talking to each other. And so what's the best way to communicate these ideas to each other? Maybe you leave that in there, maybe you don't. That's a judgment call. Hmm. Okay. Hmm. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
If statement can be not equal to empty,
Hmm.
then we can start it with wrong,
Hmm.
and comparison can start
Oh, I see. Yeah. Okay. Right. So.
if there is any string that's empty, it
Hmm.
is given just equals.
Hmm.
It moves on to the next one.
Gotcha. Nice. I like it. Okay. Sweet. I like it. Okay. Well, that was really cool. And one, it gave me a really good sense of where you're all at, which is at a pretty high level. So congratulations to you folks. Like your JavaScript seems like it's really solid. So that's great. And there were two other things, if we're ready to move on from this, that you had to look at, right? So you looked at some ES6, kind of an intro into the ES6 stuff. Is that ringing a bell? What's that? The let's see. Yikes, that's right. Where's the pre-work? There. Oh yeah. Okay. Cool. It was right. Da-ba-ba-ba-bum. Yeah, it was the jQuery. Okay, cool. So we did not talk about that because we're gonna talk a little bit more tomorrow. But there was the stuff about ES6. Did anybody run into that one? Okay, cool. Okay, that's because I wasn't. Now I'm sorry. I'm kind of sounding flaky now, but I wasn't sure if that was a pre-work thing, and it wasn't. It was something we're going to talk about tonight. So now we'll talk. We'll talk about it now. So so JavaScript for a long, long, long time didn't change hardly at all. Like it's was created. I think someone can remind me. It was created in something like 10 days, like something absurd. Yeah, 10 days, um, and uh, and it stayed pretty much like that for a long time. And it's not nobody owns it. It's kind of there's a consortium that sort of all meets and decides and makes decisions about what they want to do to JavaScript. But there's a lot that's really really slow. Like there's a heavy emphasis on kind of like not breaking all the code that's out there, right? There's so much JavaScript out there. They don't want to mess that up, and so that's kind of good in some ways, and it's kind of lousy because there's lots of lousy stuff about JavaScript. Like it's great, it's really great, and it's totally winning, and we're taking over the world, and it's good for us, right? It's JavaScript used to be a joke. I'm serious, a joke. Nobody would use JavaScript if they could possibly avoid it. And so maybe you're in the browser and you have to make some buttons hover over or something like that, so you use JavaScript for that. Anything else, you wouldn't do it because the performance was crappy. The syntax of the language or the rules of the language were awful. And, well, that's probably enough right there. What's that? What's that? Yeah, it wasn't like ready for prime time at all. And so other tools tried, like Java early on. That was one of its promises. It tried to take over this space. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I'm plugged in too. Okay. Thank you very much, Christopher. So other tools tried. What do we got? Do we have one there? 6%. Sorry for the interruption. Oh, thank you. Let's see if this is going to stretch. Okay, thank you for that. Other tools tried to fill this space, like Java tried hard to be the language that kind of ruled the web, because so many people hated JavaScript, and they tried and they failed, and there were other tools that tried and failed. And if anyone ever remembers, I mean, Flash is not that much around anymore, but Flash for games was a great solution for games for gaming on the internet, and it ultimately failed too, for lots of reasons. But all those languages are way better than JavaScript. But JavaScript just hung around and hung around and hung around, and then it just won. It just totally won. It's totally is the winner now. And I used to hate JavaScript, and now I've learned to love it because I'm so impressed, like how it could go from a joke to the total victor that it is now. And it's gotten better because there's this arms race going on between the browser vendors, so between Google and Safari and Firefox and all that, and they're squeezing out the performance of JavaScript at an insane level. They're fighting with each other so hard to get JavaScript to their ways of using JavaScript to be the winner, that we win. Like, we get the win from that. We can now use JavaScript on the server side. That's what Node is. Someone was mentioning Node earlier. We used to have to write another language for that. You used to have to know how to do PHP or Ruby or whatever. There's a whole bunch of Python, whatever. We can learn JavaScript and go all the way from the very, very front of the browser all the way to the very back of the server side, and really be full stack. That's totally new, and it's really nice for us, right? And it's all from this junky language that was made in 10 days. And so they finally gave it a major overhaul. I guess it was in 2015, because that's the name of it, ES 2015, but it's also oftentimes called ES6. So ES stands for ECMAScript, and you don't need to remember that. And they gave it a really, really long overdue fresh coat of paint, and they added in several new features that are really, really nice. And we will we'll talk about a little about them tonight. And so, anyways, when anyone talks about ES6, there's since then been an ES7, and there's going to be an ES8 or whatever. The big one that really mattered is kind of ES6. And so, one of the things it gave us, not sure how I'm going to do this. I guess I'll just do it right here. Is it gave us sorry, I'm trying to figure out how to get here. This is totally not going to work. I can't type at all. Maybe we'll take a. That would be great. Huh? What do we got? What are we up to now? 9%. Okay. All right. If Christopher, I'll plug it in when Christopher gets here. Thank you very much. Here we go. I got it over here. Thanks. So there are a bunch of new features in ES6, and I'll slack out what they are. Not all of them, but I'll slack out some resources so you could study more on them. But right now we're going to start with just two things. So I want to ask you what your knowledge is and memory is of JavaScript scoping. Okay, so we got a variable foo equals bar. So how much did you learn about scope in 201? So, like, and basically in this case, this means who has access to this foo variable in this? What's that? What's that? Global, everyone. Yeah, exactly. Global and everyone. That's exactly right. Now how about did I do that right? Function, yeah. Okay. So console log foo. Okay, what do you think we're going to see there when these consoles log out? Bar and 0. Okay, cool. And what if we if we log out Baz out here? How about there? Undefined, yeah. It might even do worse than undefined. It might even, we'll see. Let's see what happens. Yeah, even worse. It'll say, you can't quite see that because of the red here, but it's saying not only is it undefined, like undefined, it's saying I don't even know what the heck that is. I have no idea what a Baz is. So those are the two scopes that matter in JavaScript. And you can get a lot done just with those two scopes, right? You've got your global scope and you've got inside a function scope. And inside a function, you can see stuff that's in the global scope. And if you're inside two functions, you can see what's inside your function B and also your enclosing function A and also the global scope. So you can have all that. And you could do a lot with that. It also has some issues. You could end up with something where like you've got global variables that are all over the place, or you might be using libraries from somebody else, or some code from somebody else that's already using that name. You get into all these collisions, and there's ways around that too. One of the things that ES6 does is it gives you a new way of defining stuff. And there's two of them. There's let and there's const. ES6 has a bunch of stuff, but this is probably the biggest one in a nutshell that it gives you. So let has different scope rules. Basically, it is inside any block. It could be, you could have your let defined outside of any block. Let's try that. Let's actually do that. Let glob equal global. And let's log out here. Let's see what we get. Okay. Yeah, so we've got that defined at the top level, and it's okay with that, just like it would be with var. And we can then you've got your foo that's in here inside this block. This isn't a function, right? This is just a block of code delimited by these curly braces. So in ES5 days, that would be okay, right? Because foo would actually be still within this top level scope, the global scope. It's not anymore. It's just inside of here. So that's what let gives you. It's kind of like that's a little underwhelming just right there, but you will run into cases as we build more sophisticated applications where being able to keep your scope down at a small level inside your blocks is going to be really helpful. So we don't have to like this doesn't have to be a big deal right now, but we're gonna be using code like this soon. And the other one is const. And all const is just a variable that anybody know off the top of their what a const does? Yeah. So there we go. That's going to give you an error. And const can be thought of as sort of short for constant. And it just means that you can't reassign foo to anything else. Now here's a thing that you'll run into sometimes, is that this can be kind of counterintuitive, but if you set foo, foo equals an object, like that. Now let's log that out. That's okay, cool. So we got like a little object there. And then if we try to say foo equals something else, error, right? Cool. We try to set foo equal to something else. That can't happen with a constant. But how about this? What's going to happen there? What's that? Yeah, exactly. So what constants does is it says this binding between foo and whatever you set it to, that's done. Like that's gonna be it for the life of that constant. But that doesn't mean you can't muck around with what's inside here. So it could be counterintuitive, and in fact, in some other languages you can't do this. But in JavaScript you can, and so you can change this if this was an array. You could change the array. Like that's fine. Because you're not actually changing the binding, is what it's called there. So just so you know, that to me that's always felt counterintuitive. It seemed like if you set it to something that should kind of be frozen, and depending on by how you define it, it's true. This association is frozen, but what's going on inside there is different. Now, if it's a string, if it's a number, if it's a couple other things, then that's going to be totally frozen. But it won't be the case with arrays and objects. Yeah. Cool. Okay. So we're going to go through tonight. I'll post up some